The Resident Evil games are no strangers to remakes. In fact, there have been so many that the franchise has seen. Let me just list a few. Resident Evil Outbreak, which recreated many of the game's environments again, like the RPD, the Umbrella Labs, the streets of Raccoon City, and so on. Resident Evil Darkside Chronicles, which retold the stories of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil Code Veronica. Then we had Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles, which went through the events of Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 3, and even some parts of Resident Evil 2, like the Fourth Survivor. Umbrella Chronicles also touched on how Ada survives and escapes Raccoon City, but that was never really addressed in the original RE2, so we'll just leave it at that. The events of Resident Evil 1 were also retold in the arcade game Biohazard Packy Slot, which was only available in Japan. So yeah, it's pretty safe to say that Capcom likes to remake games a lot. Let's examine the games regarded as the true remakes of the first and second RE games. Are there any differences or similarities between these two as remakes? Which one is more faithful to the original? Which game is the better remake? Let's take a look and find out for ourselves. Be warned though, this video will contain spoilers, so just a heads up. So the Resident Evil 1 remake was released exclusively for the GameCube in 2002, but since then it has been ported to other consoles. Just a quick summary for those of you who haven't played it. The year is 1998. There are some bizarre murders on the outskirts of Raccoon City, so the Raccoon City's police department's Special Tactics and Rescue Service, abbreviated STARS, are sent to investigate. They lose contact with their Bravo team and go look for the site of their helicopter crash. When they do eventually find it, they land and are immediately attacked by zombie dogs, leaving the STARS members no choice but to flee and seek refuge in an old mansion. And in there, unspeakable evil lurks, and the STARS members have to find a way to survive. The Resident Evil 1 remake was different. It retained the old camera angles and what some people may refer to as tank controls, as the classic RE titles did. This is either an advantage or a disadvantage, depending on the kind of fan you are. For me personally, I love the old school camera angles and controls, mainly because I kinda grew up with the older Resident Evil titles. The camera angles did an excellent job of hiding enemies from your point of view, and maintaining that suspense as it made you feel more claustrophobic. Now, as for the controls, some people may regard them as being too rigid, which I can understand as well. Going back to a classic Resident Evil game after a while of not playing, I definitely have trouble getting used to the controls again, so I can understand the frustration. The Resident Evil 2 remake employed the over-the-shoulder view once more, and while many old-school fans were quite upset over this, as I was too, but hey, at least it's an improvement over the first-person view from Resident Evil 7. Nevertheless, the third-person view, in my opinion, allowed for a much less limited player experience. Now the player can aim at multiple regions of the enemy, better interact with the environment, and so on. It would have been a nice compromise for Capcom to include the option for fixed as well as third person, but you know, life is unfair and all that. Which perspectives do you prefer though? Let me know. I'm quite curious what other fans think. Outfits. When it comes to the clothes the characters were wearing, the Resident Evil 1 remake was quite faithful to the classic game. You can see Jill Valentine's classical outfit and the remake iteration. Same thing goes for Chris Redfield. Classic and remake. As for the Resident Evil 2 remake, well, there's a bit of a difference there. Leon's outfit is quite different, even though it's not all that noticeable at first. Notice how he's wearing a bulletproof vest instead of the RPD piece of cloth bolted to his uniform. I mean, the remake version is obviously more realistic for sure. But the unlockable costume in the remake is actually quite faithful to the original game. The same cannot be said about Claire Redfield's outfit, however. She's got a red leather jacket and some jeans, whereas in the original, she's wearing her infamous pink suit, with a black short-sleeved turtleneck and shorts. The unlockable costume, unfortunately, isn't very accurate to the classic Resident Evil 2. She has her arms bare, and she's not wearing the long gloves she wore in the original. I honestly don't know why they tweaked her costume like that while they left Leon's practically untouched. Why, Capcom? Is it because you want to sell figurines or something? I mean, I don't know. When I played with Claire in this costume and went out in the rainy parts of the game, I'd get so distracted by how shiny her shoulders were. They were just so shiny. So I guess whatever Capcom planned worked? I don't know. Anyway, if you as an old school player still aren't satisfied, then Capcom also released a free DLC on Valentine's Day where you can get the classic polygonal models. Neat. Voices. It shouldn't be surprising that the Resident Evil 1 remake had some new voice actors to replace the old voices.
Stop it! Don't open that door!
But Chris is...
What is it?
Maybe it's Chris. Now, Jill, can you go?
I'm going with you. Chris is our old partner, you know.
Okay, let me handle this.
See what I mean? So the new cast did quite an alright job, I thought. There were still the cheesy lines here and there, but personally, I think that cheesiness was what made Resident Evil so lovable. For the RE2 remake, it was a little different. Now, Leon was already voiced by many different men before. He was voiced by Paul Haddad in RE2, Paul Mercier in RE4, Matthew Mercer in RE6 and the CGI movie RE Damnation. Sorry if I kinda butchered the names. Claire Redfield, on the other hand, was a different story. She had been voiced by Alison Court since 1998, all the way until she was replaced in Resident Evil Revelations 2. Same thing goes for Ada. She was mostly voiced by Sally Cahill and replaced in Resident Evil The Umbrella Chronicles, and by Courtney Taylor in RE6 and so on. I thought Sally Cahill did the best job, to be honest. She captured that mystery and seductiveness of Ada very well. But you can decide for yourself.
That's a large thing you have there. But I don't like it when men play rough.
Leon, Claire, and Ada have all had their old voices changed in the RE2 remake. The reasons why aren't fully elucidated, but there was a lot of talk about Capcom wanting to make a different creative decision. But ultimately, it was most likely because they wanted to go with non-unionized voice actors. That's quite a shame. It would have been nice to see the older cast, but I guess it doesn't always work out that way. Nonetheless, I didn't think the new voices were that bad at all. The environments. The Resident Evil 1 remake pretty much rebuilt the areas from its classic counterpart from the ground up. You can clearly see that in this comparison video. Credit to DudeRandom84. Of course, there was even the addition of some new areas as well, such as Lisa Trevor's cabin and her lair. The numerous rooms of the mansion are quite easily recognizable, and that even applies to the later areas explored in the game, like the underground lab for instance. This is in contrast to the Resident Evil 2 remake, where Capcom took a lot of creative liberty with the environments. Let's take a look at the precinct, just as an example. The RPD has actually been altered quite a bit. You see, in the original, the location of the goddess statue was towards the front of the hall, while in the remake it was towards the back. In addition to that, the RPD hall was more cluttered in the remake, which would make more sense in a zombie outbreak type of situation, while it's rather empty in the original. Another big change was the removal of the ladder at the back of the hall. The ladder was used to climb up to the second floor of the police station. Other than that, most of the RPD remained quite recognizable. This didn't apply much to, say, the Umbrella Lab, which was quite distinct compared to the classic RE2. I don't really understand why they changed the design of the underground lab so much, while keeping the police station virtually unchanged. To me that makes no sense, but hey, at least the new design doesn't look half bad. Puzzles. We know that Resident Evil, as a series, is known for the many puzzles encountered in the game. Both remakes had extra puzzles in addition to the old ones. For example, the death mask puzzle in the RE1 remake, and the greenhouse control room puzzle in RE2 remake. Also, some puzzles were altered while maintaining the same spirit that their originals had. Obviously, it makes no sense to remake the puzzles and their solutions, as that would disrupt the player's experience due to predictability, so revamping them was the best bet. Music. As I've covered in my previous video, the Resident Evil 1 remake included updated versions of the original soundtrack. I'm talking every room that had some form of music play in it was completely remade. Listen to this as an example. You stumble upon this theme while exploring one of the rooms in the guardhouse. And here it is in the remake. You have no idea how hard I fangirled when I heard the enhanced versions of the same soundtrack as I explored the mansion, the guardhouse, the lab, just all of it. It was very nostalgic, and it definitely set the mood. Unfortunately, that's not the case in the RE2 remake, which was quite a shame, I thought, because the classic RE2 had some pretty solid soundtrack, some of the best in the series for sure. Capcom did include renewed versions of the RPD Hall theme, and the save room theme. But it's too bad that they only play for a duration of 10 seconds max. I would have loved to hear them play every time I entered the main hall and the save rooms too. Enemies. The enemies in the RE1 remake were quite identical to the original Resident Evil 1. You know, the Tyrant, Plant 42, Black Tiger, and not to mention the addition of new enemies as well, like Lisa Trevor as I mentioned before. And of course the Crimson Heads. Who can forget the Crimson Heads? There were no Crimson Heads in the RE2 remake, but the zombies were hard enough to kill already, so yeah, maybe that was for the best. The same can be said about the enemies for the RE2 remake. However, there were a few changes to creatures such as Mr. X, giving him his cute little hat, and some slight variation regarding his Super Tyrant form. You have Ivy, which went from this to that. Then you have the stages of metamorphosis of William Birkin, which remain similar with the exception of Stage 3 and Stage 4. I didn't mind the redesigns. I thought they did a great job, especially with Birkin's Stage 3. But definitely let me know what you think of the changes below. The RE2 remake also removed some enemies that appeared in its classic counterpart. Such enemies include the spiders, the crows, and the moth. And finally, weapons. First off, I'm sure you've noticed that RE2 remake brought back defense weapons that were actually first introduced by the RE1 remake. So they're similar in that regard. since the originals did not have defense weapons. RE2 Remake also included gunpowder to create your own ammo. This wasn't present in either classics, and was actually first presented in Resident Evil 3. As for the actual weapons, they were the same as in the original. You have Leon's Matilda, Claire's Sparkshot, etc., etc. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Claire's bowgun made an appearance in the remake at all. Either way, it felt like the selection of weapons they did include were satisfying enough. All in all, it seemed to me that the more faithful remake was of Resident Evil 1. Nevertheless, the Resident Evil 2 remake brought many new things to the table, which I know many fans, including myself, enjoyed. The developers said it themselves, it was supposed to be a reimagining rather than a strict remake, so to speak. While the RE1 remake will always be a masterpiece and the gold standard of remakes, the RE2 one will be known for its capability to revitalize and recapture the horror of a timeless classic. They both have their merits and charm. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed my comparisons of the two remakes. Please do let me know what you think. Which one did you enjoy best? Which one is the better remake? Did you disagree with something I said, or did you think that I summarized it pretty well? Feel free to have a discussion below, it's definitely welcome. And I'm curious to hear what other Resident Evil fans think as well. Thank you so much for watching, it means a lot to me, and I really hope you do stick around for more. And if you do, I'll see you in the next one.